on some more of them, and she called the number on the back, and we got her daughter, Emma, who's over there working the booth, and we were passing across the country. She said, well, just stop at my house and pick them up. So we did. We stopped, and then we got snowed in. She lives in Wisconsin, and there was a giant Midwest storm coming right on our tail, and the entire interstate was all closed down. So we were stuck there for 3 days, and I ended up, I was a contractor at the time, so I fixed every little thing in her house, all the creaky doors and the wobbling handrails. And so her husband asked me, hey, do you do roofs? I was like, sure, yeah. I was finishing some jobs in North Dakota at the time. So I came back after I'd finished those jobs and re-roofed and sided their house, Emma's house in Wisconsin. And while I was there, we were looking for a gluten-free option for our son. And my son is gluten intolerant, and Emma introduced me to Barbara's starter and her sourdough bread making, and it was so amazing. And from there, we kind of springboard into this whole gluten-free sourdough idea, and it's been a 12-year research project ever since. But it's been so amazing having her in my life, and I just want to tell you that she's such an amazing person, Barbara and Emma, and they're just servants. So she works so hard. She goes from place to place to place, nonstop on the plane. Barbara hardly takes a break. So just really awesome that she could make it out here to Denton, North Carolina. So she's touched my life very dearly. My wife and I follow all of her principles in our day-to-day, and I want to encourage each of you to consider doing the same. Get her book, listen to her lectures, and this woman will change your life. So without ado, here's Barbara.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm real glad to be here in North Carolina. That's how you say it. And I think you've had a bit of rain lately. But that's over to the west, and we certainly pray for what's happening over there. And we are glad that it's dried up a little bit here. But I'd like to welcome you tonight because I'm sure all of you are here because you're interested in knowing how to give your body the best conditions, not only for maintenance, but if the body's not working well, also for healing. Because I believe that the human body was designed to heal itself. And it will heal itself if you give it the right conditions. And many people today are sick through ignorance. They're not the basic conditions that the body requires for healing. I know that if I bronchitis and I realised that I had a dairy intolerance, and it wasn't really talked about much back then, but I realise now that that was my problem. So I got bronchitis a couple of times a year. Mum would take me. The doctor would give me cherry flavoured medicine, which I know now was a bottle of antibiotics. I would take it a couple of times a day, and in a week I'd be better. Do you know I now realise that if I'd done nothing, because we live in a body that's got inbuilt ability to heal itself, but it must have conditions. And so, what are those conditions? Okay, looks like I've got a handheld. I'll just pull that aside.
Can I take this off?
Yeah, you can take it off. Tristan's like one of my sons. He's my American son. So he's allowed to take my microphone off. Yeah, and here's my... Okay. And you know the best laid plans of mice and man are known to go astray. Beauty, mate, thanks. All good. I just thank God that we not only have a body that can adapt and adjust, we have a brain that can adapt and adjust. And I'm so glad that the little book Ministry of Healing is available here, because that was one of my first health books. And in page 127 of the Ministry of Healing, the writer says the only hope of better things is the education of people in the right principles. Because I'd like to suggest that most of us were brought up the way I was brought up, that when you go sick, you go to the doctor, he gives you a drug, and you get better. Am I right? But a lot of people are starting to question that, especially what happened in 2020. Especially now, a few years later, when we're looking back and we're realising that 59 people didn't die. And I think a lot of people are realising that you can't really believe what the media says. And yeah. Otherwise you wouldn't be here, because they reckon I'm a threat to public safety. So I'm just warning you. God's government is a government of freedom. And freedom is based on free choice. And I am the master of my destiny. I am the one that chooses what I do and what I do not do to my body. And every parent is the master, the God-given master or mistress of their children. And don't let anyone take that right away from you. And whenever a mandate comes in that you got to do this, it's time to stand. Yep. So in 2021, or 2020 actually, in 2020 when it was illegal to protest in Australia, my husband held one every 2 weeks. And the first time he held it, there were 500 people and there were about 300 police, and they came up to Michael and said, "Excuse me, sir, but if you speak, we'll arrest you." And Michael said, "That'll be interesting." And he stood up immediately and spoke. And they came up and they said, "Sir, you've got to stop." And he said, "Look, excuse me, I've not finished yet." And they grabbed him. And as they're walking away, he realised that they weren't holding him very tightly. So he told me later he decided to have a bit of fun and he ran. And they couldn't catch him. Because even though this is a white-haired man, he's tall and slim, and we run up and down mountains every day. Do you know it's time for the soldiers of God to get fit? We've got to get into training. And they couldn't catch him. Because they've got all these things on their belts, which I think makes it a bit heavy. Anyway, the whole crowd was whistling and cheering, and I think Michael was quite enjoying it. And they were taking video clips and photos, and finally he thought, I better let them catch me. And they jumped on him, and one young man is pulling his wrist back and it was hurting, and Michael said, "Don't be so disrespectful, I'm an elderly gentleman, stop hurting me." And the young man said, "You shouldn't have run." Michael said, "It's my right." Anyway, they decided not to arrest him. They decided to just charge him. So they took him to a table, and there was a policeman there to take his particulars, and this huge big guy came up with a beard and tattoos all over him, and he said, "Are they hurting you?" And Michael said, "I'm okay, mate." He was a biker. He was Samoan, he was big. And he said to the policeman, "You heard him and you answer to us." And the policeman went, "Yeah, righto." And this guy said, we're just over there. And there are about 30 of them, big guys. And there are their bikes. I call them God's angels. Never underestimate the way God can work in your life in so many ways. But we need to do our part. We need to look after this body, and we need to be ready because we don't know what's around the corner. And when people say to me, Barbara, how do you do this? You're in a different place every week. I say, I've found a formula. And if you abide by that formula, which we'll be going through the next few days, the body works. And that's what I'm interested in. And I have discovered that if you give the body the right conditions, it'll maintain you very well. You look after it, it'll look after you. And I have also discovered that if you're not well, these basic conditions can bring about a healing situation in the body. 2 weeks later, Michael held his next protest. There were hardly any police there, and they all stood back. Because that night, that video clip went up on the nightly news. And can you imagine who looked a bit silly? 23 chromosomes from our father, and there's a huge amount of information in this DNA. And the DNA is made up of the food we eat. It's made up of polysaccharides. What are polysaccharides? Many sugars, made up of amino acids. Amino acids is a breakdown from the protein that we eat. And everything's glued together with minerals. And minerals comes from mostly our vegetables, especially our dark green leafy vegetables. Hippocrates, father of medicine, 400 years BC, he said, let food be your medicine and medicine be your food. And he didn't know the intricacies of what I've just shown you here. And when I look in some supermarket trolleys, I think, how will their DNA ever be made? The food that they're eating does not contain the nutrients necessary even for their DNA to function efficiently. We're constantly being remade according to the pattern, according to the formula that's written in the DNA. It's like the plan, the plans on how the new cell is made, the blueprint. We're constantly being remade. We've got new eye cells every 1 to 2 days. That's why if you have eye surgery, it heals very quickly. We've got new cells lining our gastrointestinal tract every 3 to 5 days. We've got new skin every month. We've got a new liver under our right rib every 6 weeks. And that liver's an incredible organ. It's a recoverable organ. New bones every 3 months. We're constantly being remade according to the pattern and according to the formula. And so then the question arises, well, if we're constantly being remade, why aren't we better? Let's choose one condition called irritable bowel syndrome, which is in fact, I just got a message recently from a lady that said her friend's 10-year-old daughter has been diagnosed with irritable bowel Crohn's disease and told that she'll be on medication for the rest of her life. Put not your trust in princes, neither in the Son of Man, in whom there's no help. There's no help there. But we live in a body that's got an inbuilt ability to heal itself. And the cells that line the gut are remade every 3 to 5 days. Well, in my book, Sustain Me, I've got a chapter on the colon. And I've got a section on irritable bowel, Crohn's disease, colitis. And I show all the things that you can do to get healing. Because we've seen people totally heal from that. Isn't that good news? Very good news. Very good news. But it needs faith. My eldest daughter, Emma, she's got her shop there. When she was 5, she said, Mum, I'm going to grow up in a minute. Now, it took another 10 years before she actually grew up. And when we're sick, we want to be better in a minute, am I right? But it takes a little bit of time, doesn't it? And that's where faith is required. In Hebrews 11, verse 1, the Bible says, faith is the substance of things hoped for. It's the evidence of things not seen. If you can see it, it's not faith. And that's what natural healing requires. The fact is, we didn't get sick overnight. Sometimes it takes 20 or 30 years before finally the body begins to protest. But the good news is it won't take 20 or 30 years to get better. But it might take a few months. That's where faith comes into it. So what I'd like to show you is how the new cell is made. A photocopy is made. It's called RNA because DNA cannot leave. So a photocopy is made. It's called RNA. An RNA comes down to the little factory in the cell. It's called ribosome. And ribosome is the little factory where the new cell is made. And I'm going to explain it like the building of a brick wall. So the first brick goes down. Maybe it's phenylalanine. Next brick goes down, maybe it's methionine. Next brick goes down, maybe it's lysine. Next brick goes down, maybe it's tyrosine. Can you see what's happening here? Every amino acid is a different shape, and it fits into the next one like pieces in a jigsaw according to the pattern, according to the formula. And let's say we're making a new gastrointestinal tract cell, and every 3 to 5 days out pops a new gastrointestinal tract cell. Well, if someone's got irritable bowel, how come they're not healed in, say, 2 weeks? Is that a reasonable question? Especially if those cells are remade every 3 to 5 days. Well, let me show you something. Let's have a look at how the gastrointestinal tract cell that's irritated, like in Crohn's disease, colitis, irritable bowel, Crohn's disease, gastritis. Let's look at how that's made. The first brick goes down, maybe methionine is there, and then we're ready for the next brick, but we've got a problem. There's a piece of information missing. What goes in there? There's a glitch in the formula. And there's a rogue cell. What's the rogue cell? The rogue cell is a breakdown from chemicals, poisons, and I think you'll agree with me, we're awash with them. And as we go through these classes, you might be surprised at some of the places we're being exposed to chemicals. You have no say over the neighbour, but you have total say over your house. It's time to do a cleanse of the laundry cupboard. It's time to do a cleanse of what's under your kitchen sink. Do you know what's under my laundry cupboard? White vinegar, sodium bicarbonate, bottle of eucalyptus oil, and biodegradable washing detergent. That's it. You'll save a fortune once you get rid of all of that stuff. And start having a good look at what's in your personal care products. People say, Barbara, what moisturiser do you use? I say, nothing. But do you know what I do? I eat olive oil, I eat at least a teaspoon every meal. Your skin is an illustration of how you're eating. And when we look at the heart tomorrow night, you're going to see that fat doesn't cause heart disease, and this fat phobia that's been plaguing the planet for the last 40 years is actually a myth. Put not your trust in princes. They often get it wrong. And if you notice, they don't say, sorry, we've got it wrong. They don't say that. Have you noticed? You know what they say? New research reveals. Anyway, we'll hold back on that because we're going to look at that tomorrow night. And in my second lecture tomorrow night on hormones, guess what our sex hormones are made from? Cholesterol. And if you don't have enough cholesterol, guess what's going to happen? Your sex hormones can't be made properly. Just a preview. Just a preview. Let's get back to our irritable bowel syndrome cell. So we had a piece of information missing, a rogue cell came along, it didn't fit anyway, but it tries its hardest to get in there because there's a gap. And now we're up to tyrosine. Where does it fit? It hasn't got its usual docking station, but it does the best it can. And then we're time for lysine. Oh no, the person's lacking an amino acid. Why are they lacking amino acids? Because they're eating all day long. Oh, here's another myth. Eating every 2 hours. Do you know what the most popular way of eating that they say is the best today? Time-restricted eating. Do you know what time-restricted eating is? Eating twice, 6 hours apart in 24 hours. What happened to the eating every 2 hours? And notice they don't say, sorry, we got it wrong. They'll never say that. What do they say? Oh, new research is revealing. Do you know the body hasn't changed? Do you know, when I was a kid and I was hungry in the afternoon, you know what I was told? Wait for dinner. Eh? We ate at meal times. Well, actually, they're going back to that now. Another illustration to prove don't put your trust in princes. A lady came to our retreat with a whole pile of tests, and she said to my husband, "Look at my tests." He said, "Oh, I don't believe that." She said, "But Michael, these are the blood tests." He said, "Yeah, but they're often wrong, you know." She just looked at him shocked. Do you ever think that? It's possible. It's possible. Psalm 146 verse 3 says, "Put not your trust in princes, neither in the Son of Man in whom there is no help." But you know what verse 5 says? "Happy is he that hath the God of Jacob as his help, whose hope is in the Lord his God, that made heaven, earth, sea, and all that in them in," that includes us, "and keeps truth forever." That's what I'm interested in, is truth. And you know, the Bible says you can do nothing against the truth. You can only for the truth. So it will come through, though sometimes one wonders. I agree. And I think we all wondered in 2020, when will this end? I think a lot of people have woken up since that time. People used to say to me, "Barbara, how can I protect myself against COVID in 2021, 2022? I said, "It's real easy. Stop watching the news." That certainly is a prince you can't believe. So let's come back to our sad, irritable bowel syndrome cell. We're missing amino acids because the person's hydrochloric acid is so exhausted because they're eating every 2 hours, because that's what the princes said. They're stressed with their meals because things aren't working. They're drinking too much water with their meal. It washes all the hydrochloric acid away. And so the protein's not getting broken down properly, and even if they might be eating properly, it's all ending up in the toilet, but not in their bodies. And there's another rogue cell. There's a few of them around. It's trying to find somewhere to poke itself, and every 3 to 5 days out pops a new irritable bowel syndrome cell. Eesh. Can you see that it's not just one thing? It can be damage in the message, in the DNA. It can be lack of amino acid. It can be exposure to the environmental poisons. Do you know, we can have a strong rope, and a strong man cannot break that rope, but a little mouse can come along and start nibbling thread by thread by thread. And the strong rope that the strong man could not break, that strong man who could just stomp on that mouse and kill it in a second, that little tiny mouse can break that rope. And that often is what's happening when people get sick. It's not just one thing. And that's why it's often hard to put your finger on it. That's why the first thing we do, if we're not well, is we've got to look at the history. Because Newton's third law of motion states that to every action there's an equal and an opposite reaction. In other words, there is always a cause. And if any of the princes say to you, "Oh, it's just you," you've got every right to say, "Excuse me, but that's very unscientific." That's like there's a water leak and you think, "Oh, it's just the roof." And then you just paint over it, and then every 3 weeks you paint over it again, and then eventually you wonder why the roof falls in. That's why you look at your history, because there's no one like you. That's why I believe we all should be our own doctor. It's our God-given right, what we do and what we do not do to our body. But when God says, "I've not given you the spirit of fear, but of power, love and a sound mind," you know what a sound mind does? It investigates. Power. What's power? Knowledge is power. To be able to make a decision, we need information. If you're going to put a new air conditioner in your house, don't you investigate? Don't you find out who's selling it? Don't you find out the reports? Don't you investigate? How much more important this living machinery? And today with Google, if you're told you've got to go on that drug, go home and Google it and have a good look at the side effects. Woo! And then pick up Sustain Me and have a look in the back and find out what you can do to work with those healing powers that God put into their body to bring about healing. What I'd like to look at now is what's causing this damage. What's causing the damage in the DNA? Because you can see that that's one of the causes of why people get sick, is it's damage in the DNA. So let's have a look at the reasons for damage in the DNA. Because there's always a reason. Rudyard Kipling, very famous poet, he wrote a whole poem on it. He said, I have 6 trusty serving men. They taught me all I know. Their names are what, why, when, where, how, and who. Do you take them with you everywhere you go? And if your health professional, if your prince gets annoyed at your questions, arise, politely excuse yourself, leave, and don't pay the bill. We, the consumer, have power. So what causes this damage? The research is showing that 92% of DNA damage is caused by a mineral deficiency. How could we be mineral deficient? Do you know, one of the things I like about the southern states of America is all your greens. You have collard greens, yeah? Lamb's quarters, we don't have them. I thought lamb's quarters was a part of a lamb, but it's a green, isn't it? And if people say to me, Barbara, what are we going to feed you? I say, it's real easy, greens and beans. I love greens and beans. Why am I mentioning these greens? Because green leafy vegetables are the highest source of minerals. So we should be having them every day. And when you cook your greens, you do not lose your minerals. You only lose it if you throw the water away. But one of the problems today is the soil. Dr. Matthew Walker in his book, Dr. Robert Thompson. Dr. Robert Thompson in his book, The Calcium Lie, he shows the figures. He shows that 50 years ago, there was twice as many minerals in the soil as there are in today. Why? There's always a reason. Well, unfortunately, often the same crop is grown in the same soil again and again and again. And between crops, the soil's not fed. So I'm a gardener. When everything locked down in 2020, I became the gardener. I had a lot of fun that year. And in the garden, in the vegetable garden, if I grew tomatoes, I know that for that tomato to grow and to produce those beautiful tomatoes, where has it got the nutrients from? The soil. And so when that crop has finished, I must feed that soil. I must replace the soil because the tomato took so much out of it. How do I replace it? Compost. Compost is how you replace it. And then the next crop I put in is not tomato, it's carrots or beetroot. I alternate a top crop and a root crop, but I always feed the soil. Unfortunately today, a lot of farmers, especially big scale, they're doing the same crop every year, and they're not feeding the soil, and so the food is mineral deficient. And when the soil's deficient, the the vegetables and the fruits are deficient, and the people that eat that food are deficient. Have you ever eaten an apple off the tree? Very good. You know what you're tasting? Minerals. So a lot of the fruits and vegetables don't have the flavour today because they don't have the minerals. And so then the person puts all these chemical MSGs and flavourings in to try and make it taste nice, further causing deficiencies. And that's why organically grown fruits and vegetables are so important. It's like Tristan's simple need bread there. Some people complain about the price. I said, you know, every flour in that bread is organic, and that costs a bit more. But one slice of his bread is almost equal in nutrient value to a whole loaf of many of the breads that you buy in the supermarket. I'm fussy as to where my dollar goes. I want my dollar to go to local industries. That's where I want my dollar to go. So not only is it because of the way our food is grown, but stimulants. Stimulants effectively leach minerals out. Why? Especially calcium and magnesium, because they're the alkaline minerals. And sugar, refined sugar, it's a pure acid actually. Refined sugar is so acid that when it goes into the body, the bones release minerals to try and calm it down. In fact, one writer said sugar leaves the body better dressed than when it went in. How did it go in? Went in naked, no minerals. I'm not talking about sugar cane, but if you've ever eaten sugar cane, it takes you about half an hour to eat 2 inches. Did you know it takes a metre of sugar cane to deliver 1 teaspoon of refined sugar? Did you know that in a can of Coca-Cola there are 10 teaspoons of sugar? That's 10 metres of sugar cane. Could you eat 10 metres of sugar cane? No, your jaw would break. Can you see the message from God? This is a pure crystallized acid, and it leaches the minerals out of the body. That's one reason why so many young children are having tooth decay now. The sugar leaches the minerals from the inside, weakening the teeth, and then the sugar on the outside, coming in the sodas, the candy bars, the cookies, all of this, that sugar feeds the microorganisms that effectively can start breaking down that dentine. I raised my children in a rainforest, and everything they ate, I made. I made dessert about 3 times a week, and they could have it when they'd eaten all their veggies. I'd make it with honey or maple syrup or dried fruits. And I thought I'd better take them to the dentist. I had never been to the dentist, so I think the eldest was about 15 and the youngest was about 4, 6 children. And the dentist looked at their teeth. It only took her about 20 minutes to look at them all. And she said, "Your children's teeth astonish me." I said, "Why?" She said, "They're so strong and there's no decay." She said, "One child has a little decay, but she said, I can see it's where the food gets caught. But she said, the teeth are so strong that decay has arrested." Whew. I didn't give them sugar. And I remember we were in a big shopping mall one day, and I had my 6 children there. And it must have been near Christmas, because Santa Claus and all his helpers were there giving out candies to kids. And they tried to give them to my kids, and my kids just shook their heads. And they'd never seen this. So they looked at me and they said, "Huh?" And I said, "Oh, they're allergic." The fact is, every kid is allergic. And Santa and his helpers went, "Oh." And my children went, "Oh." Walked away having a little grin. See, my children were so well fed, they had no desire for such things. And yes, I did talk to them time to time about what the sugar does. Choose your hard. Have you heard the poem, Choose Your Hard? Marriage is hard, divorce is hard, choose your hard. Saving every cent is hard, being in debt is hard, choose your hard. Spending a bit of extra time so that you make your children's food and not giving them sugar, sometimes that might be hard. But I tell you what, it's hard when the children's teeth are rotting before even the second teeth come through, and I have seen that. That's hard. That's hard for the child. They can't smile. They look pretty atrocious when they smile because they've got these little black stumps in their mouth. One mother told me that they want to put her child under general anaesthetic and pull the teeth out because they're all rotting. Yeah, that's hard. Choose your hard. I choose my hard, but I thought it ended up being the easy way. So what else leaches minerals out? Caffeine. Now, if you're a coffee drinker, please don't stop or you won't be able to come tomorrow night. I'm going to tell you the truth, that caffeine, oh look, the sun's shining on it just at the right time. It's a deception. To take a cup of coffee to get a lift is like taking out a loan to pay off your loan. Eventually there's nothing left. People say to me, do you drink coffee, Barbara? I say, no, I just watch the people suffer. Day one, Misty Mountain Health Retreat. And more people suffer from caffeine withdrawals at our health retreat than any other withdrawal. We have people come off methamphetamines, we have people come off, we even had a lady with a champagne alcoholic. We have people come off cigarettes, marijuana, heroin. No one suffers like the coffee drinker. I'm talking about short term. They get over it quicker. In fact, usually within 48 hours, the headache is clearing. And often as they come out of that haze of bad headaches, they start to realise, this stuff is hurting them. So why do they get so badly headaches? Because the quick rise that a person gets is actually mimicking a crisis in the body. And that crisis, when it happens, the neurotransmitters in the brain adjust, thinking there's a crisis coming, but actually no crisis does come. And so there's this constant adaptation and adjustment to what the caffeine does. If you are a coffee drinker and you're having 3 cups a day, start having 3 half cups a day, then go to 3/3 of a cup a day, then go to 3/4 of a cup a day, and often within a week you can be off without pain and suffering, because the fact is it disrupts the neurotransmitters in the brain. Do you know what that means? That you can have a couple, both having a couple of cups of coffee a day, they can give birth to a baby that has a tendency to attention deficit syndrome, hyperactivity, because of the parents' caffeine habits, even autism. And they don't tell you that on the coffee packet, do they? But what else is happening is that caffeine, because it has an acid effect in the body, it leaches minerals out of the bones, and that's your biggest storage house. How many people have osteoporosis in their 50s and 60s? And it should not be. When I I trod on a rock that was slippery, and my whole body went out and crashed down on my arm and totally broke it. The radius was out of place. Yes, I did go to emergency. Yes, and I am thankful for the orthopaedic surgeon whose skill pulled it back into place, and I'm very thankful for the pain-killing medication so I didn't feel it. That was one day. So at 4 weeks when they x-rayed it, they were surprised that it had healed so well. Well, I'd been applying, you see, I cut half the plaster off, and I applied comfrey every day. It's got a growth stimulant in it. And the nurse was surprised that the bones were knitting so well, but they wanted me to keep the plaster on for another 2 weeks. He said, "Do you have osteoporosis?" I said, "No." He said, "Have you had a test?" I said, "No." And he started laughing. I realised that must sound very silly. How do I know I don't have osteoporosis? I don't do anything that leaches minerals out of my body. I eat a high mineral diet. I make sure as much as possible they're organic. And if I slipped and my whole body went up in the air and slammed down on my wrist, and I had osteoporosis, I think I would have broken more than that radius. That's my theory. You see, your body will talk to you. Some people say, "How often do you have blood tests?" I say, "Never. I don't even know what my blood is." "Why don't I have a blood test?" "Well, why? Everything works." And I've had people say to me, "Barbara, what can I do for my high cortisol levels?" I said, "How do you know they're high?" "Well, the blood test's there." I said, "You know, it could be wrong." Do you know the best thing that you read is your body? That's what you read. And if it's not working well, Sustain Me will show you what you can do to bring some adjustments and healing back in the body. I'm so glad it's that simple. I'm so thankful to God that it is that simple. So caffeine not only leaches minerals out, caffeine can also cause damage. Oh, the sun comes just where I need it. Thank you, Father in heaven. Caffeine also damages the DNA for the neurotransmitters. Sugar, it not only leaches minerals, but it also can damage the DNA for your pancreas. How often are we seeing children today? When I was young, you never heard of a child with diabetes. And how often do we hear of children with diabetes today? They haven't been on the planet long enough or eaten sugar long enough to damage their pancreas. They've been born with a weakened pancreatic gene because of the parents' sugar habits. What also damages the DNA is tobacco. I was listening to a presentation by Professor Walter Weiss, and he was showing that children are being born today with holes in the honeycomb shape around their alveoli in their lungs, born to smoking parents. He also showed that children born to smoking parents have less alveoli in their lungs. He also showed that children can develop emphysema, well, not actually the children, but by the time they're even in their 30s and never having smoked. So tobacco not only leaches the minerals because it's a high acid, but it also damages the DNA. Alcohol. We get children born today with fetal alcohol syndrome. Born to parents that have 2 drinks a week. And often children born with fetal alcohol syndrome, it's not picked up. They're almost considered that they're not the bright, we're not the sharpest knife in the drawer, is that what we say? They're just not, they're not as severely damaged as you know, children that have Down syndrome, something like that. It's not often picked up. Often they're the children who behaviour not great, but it's fetal alcohol syndrome. Looking at what damages the DNA, chemicals. And the biggest chemical company in the world is the pharmaceutical company. Drugs never cure disease, they just change the form and location. Every drug has a side effect. First of all, seriously look at what you're washing your clothes with, what is in your personal care product, what's in the food you're eating. Seriously look at the ingredients in your washing detergent. Seriously have a look at what you're cleaning your bathroom with. Because little by little, like the dripping tap on a stone, it's weakening the body, it's putting chemicals in. Also damaging DNA. Have you heard of the thalidomide tragedy? My husband he was born in 1957, and when his mother was pregnant, she had morning sickness and she was offered thalidomide, which she refused. But many women who took that thalidomide, they gave birth to babies with no arms. Have you heard that? Drugs never cure disease. They just change the form and location. They have an effect. They're chemicals. And the pharmaceutical company makes billions out of this. They made billions recently, still are, out of a certain vaccine. And I do know that many people were blackmailed into taking this. Like, put not your trust in princes, neither in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. It doesn't mean you don't go sometimes. I went when my wrist was broken. It was a very strange looking wrist and it was so painful. I knew this was I needed more than a poultice for this one. But that was one day. In fact, that's the first broken bone I've ever had. But you know what else happened when I was sitting in emergency for 6 hours? Why was I sitting in emergency for 6 hours? Because the whole system was chocked up with people that don't know how to look after their bodies. People would come in, oh, I spilt gravy on my hand. I thought, what? We don't even know how to fix that? My little girl's got a sore finger. I feel sick. Have you had anything to drink today? Oh, I only 2 alcohol. I only 2 beers. Do you know why that's happening? Because it's free. And I thought, they reckon we're an enlightened age. I think we're a dumb age. Eh? We don't even know how to look after the body. Isn't that the first step? The first step. And I sat there for 6 hours. I'm so glad I didn't know it was going to be 6 hours. My husband eventually went and said, my wife's in a lot of pain. They said, she's in the fast track. Fast track? 6 hours? And I was confronted with the fact that we don't know how to look after our bodies anymore. And I was also confronted with the fact that now I know why I do what I do. That little book, The Ministry of Healing, said the only hope of better things is the education of people in the right principles. Principles that when you give the body the right conditions, they will heal. Only 5% can be attributed to genetics today. And why are the genes damaged? They're damaged because of mineral deficiency. They're damaged because of stimulants. They're damaged because of drugs. They're also damaged because of monosodium glutamate. Monosodium glutamate is basically a chemical, and people put it into food because they're eating food that has no flavour, and it's got no flavour because it's not organic. Did you know that one organic tomato will deliver 9 times the iron of a conventionally grown tomato? Yeah. Also, mould can come in and damage the DNA. There should be no mould in our house at all. Please check. You know, the Bible says if there's mould in the house, destroy the house. Well, settle down a minute. Yeah, we don't want to pull our houses down. First of all, find out why, because it shouldn't be there. Maybe you need to cut a few trees down. Maybe you need to fix the drain pipe. Just find out why it's there. Maybe you need to get a fan in your bathroom. Yes, yeah, the Bible says, first of all, clean out the house and shut it up, and if it grows back, maybe then destroy the house. First of all, you've got to find out why, because it's a toxic poison. My book, Self-Heal by Design, is a book that shows the true role of microorganisms in disease. And in our next lecture, looking at why cancer happens in the body and how we can turn it around, I'll be looking at that in a little bit more detail. The first step, if someone's ill, is to ascertain the cause. And sometimes the cause can be several things, but the first step is to eliminate anything that could possibly be contributing. My mother died at 51, a cripple in a wheelchair with rheumatoid arthritis. I have strong genes towards that, but you've probably noticed I'm way after 51. I'm not a cripple in a wheelchair and I'm not dead. I am so glad that though genetics loads the gun, it is lifestyle that pulls the trigger. And that goes right in line with God's method of healing and also God's government of freedom. Freedom is based on free choice. We even have the choice, even if it's in our genes. That's the good news. So I'm going to give everyone a break now, and we come back at 7 o'clock. And at 7 o'clock, please have a breath of fresh air, although there's lots of fresh air here. Please have a look at the books, and we will come back and investigate the subject of cancer.
Glaring sun, it was, hello, we're testing and it's working. Late. Hello, hello. All right, everybody. We're going to be calling Barbara back out here in a few minutes. So if we can come back to our seats. There will be an opportunity after this meeting as well for any of the vendors over here. Also, they'll be here through the week, so we'll have plenty of time, hopefully, to if you haven't had a chance to speak with Emma at her booth over there, or Simple Needs, or Sheila has the tinctures over here. They're all glycerin-based, really great products. So, was anybody not at the first lecture? Everybody was here at the first lecture? Okay, awesome. So Barbara's about 4 minutes late right now, so if we could just come in and we're going to get started. I'll just have her come out. But so if we can, I'd actually like to say a prayer for this second lecture, if we can. Just quiet down, because I forgot to do that in the first one. We want to ask God's blessing. So, Father in heaven, Lord, we're so grateful all to be here at this amazing opportunity to hear your servant speak to us about our bodies. Lord, we want to know more, and we open our hearts to you tonight. We pray, Father, that you will guide and direct Barbara's words and her hand as she writes on her whiteboard. And I just pray that everyone here could receive a rich blessing. Put your Spirit in our midst, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
That's my little granddaughter, Tilly Mae. And I wondered how long she'd stay up with me. So welcome back. We fixed the speaking. So I trust that you hear me a little bit better now. I'm a little lady with a little voice, but I'm thankful. Oops, it's missing a little bit.
I'm so sorry, but we're going to have to do this again. So I think a few people had a hard time hearing you. Is that right? Yeah. So something's wrong with our mic, so we'll have to do this.
So we'll have to do this again, okay?
I'll have to help you out one more time.
Jacqueline.
Sorry about that.
You're right. Yep, it was thoroughly tested. So thank you for coming back, and it's a very beautiful place, this, isn't it? And I always love it when it's out in the country, because that's what I am. I'm just a country girl. And if you ask me, I'd actually prefer to do this than to be in the fanciest hotels in Dubai and Saudi Arabia, which I was just a couple of weeks ago. But it is an indication that many people are sick and many people are wanting answers. And neck to neck in the world today, the two number one killers are considered to be cancer and heart disease. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at detail on heart disease, but tonight I want to have a look at cancer. So I'm going to show you or define what cancer loves and what cancer hates. Because what we want to do is we want to give the body conditions so that cancer can't survive. It can't survive in a body when it's given the right conditions. So let's define what cancer loves. It's important to know what cancer loves because we're not going to give it that. So cancer loves glucose. And the fact is that cancer consumes 15 times the glucose of any other cell. Cancer also loves it when there's no oxygen. And the red blood cell doesn't have this energy cycle because the red blood cell is the carrier of oxygen, the carrier of nutrients, the carrier of water to the cell, and the carrier away of waste. Leviticus 17:11, the Bible says the life of the flesh is in the blood, and that's why it's the life, because it carries the oxygen, the nutrients, and the water to the cell. So let's have a look at when the glucose gets in the cell. It goes through a 20-step pathway which gives us 2 units of energy. This pathway doesn't use oxygen. This pathway produces energy by the process of fermentation. The end result of the 20-step pathway is a chemical form of glucose called pyruvate. And pyruvate, as the chemical form of glucose, gets fed into what's often called the powerhouse of the cell. It's called the powerhouse of this cell because even though it's only an 8-step pathway, it delivers an impressive 36 units of energy. What makes the difference? How come a 20-step pathway only gives 2 units of energy and an 8-step pathway gives 36? The difference is oxygen. What a difference oxygen makes. This 20-step pathway is very fast, whereas the 8-step pathway is quite slow. Now, understanding this, and basically it's the energy cycle in every cell, well, 75 trillion, understanding this is paramount in understanding cancer and how cancer runs, because cancer loves this pathway here. And you can see why. Cancer loves it when there's no oxygen, and that pathway doesn't use oxygen. And cancer loves high glucose. And this pathway here is a high glucose consumer. Doesn't every cell in the body use glucose? Yes. But this pathway, it can wait for the glucose to come from the carrot and the broccoli and the lentils. But this pathway here loves the high sugar pathway. And today, and I don't think anyone ever chose to eat this way, but today, many are high carbohydrate consumers. Let's have a look at this high carbohydrate diet that many eat today. And I don't think anyone chose to eat this way. I think it's just something that's happened because we're such a fast society. Everything happens fast. And these foods are just easy. That's cereal, what an easy breakfast. Open the packet, pour milk on it, goes like wet tissue paper, down the hatch, out of the door in 10 minutes. Bread shops abound. Cakes, cookies. In Australia, we call cookies biscuits. So when we come to America and we say a sign that says biscuits and gravy, we think these Americans eat very strange. But I do realise, I think your biscuits are like scones or like a roll, yeah. So we'll just say cakes, etc. Now that takes into consideration donuts, croissants, muffins, pasties. Another high carbohydrate food is pizza. Another high carbohydrate food is pasta. Another high carbohydrate food is potatoes. Another high carbohydrate food is rice. And last and certainly least in nutritive value is the pure crystallized acid extracted from the sugarcane plant. Now, what I find interesting is, traditionally, every culture, every nation has had carbohydrates. But it's almost today that carbohydrates from a whole lot of different nations have all been lumped together and people have become high carbohydrate consumers. Now, this high carbohydrate consumption releases a lot of glucose. And remember what cancer loves, it loves the high glucose. And so the first step to conquering cancer is really greatly reducing the carbohydrate content. The three essential food groups. The three essential food groups are, number one, fibre. And all plant food is high in fibre. And the beauty of fibre is that slowly, little by little, releases the nutrients. And unfortunately, with this high carbohydrate diet, especially when it's refined, it often is deficient in fibre. The number two essential food group is protein. Protein is the building blocks to every cell. In our last lecture, we looked at how the new cell is made. It's built up with amino acids, which is a breakdown from the protein we eat. And 50% of the membrane around every cell in the body is protein. So that makes it pretty important. As a plant eater, my protein comes from legumes. That's chickpeas, lima beans, black-eyed beans, lentils. My protein comes from nuts and seeds. And in Genesis 1:29, God said, "Behold, I've given you every herb-bearing seed." So what's a herb-bearing seed? I'd like to do an assessment of Genesis 1:29, and I don't believe that you can improve on the Garden of Eden diet. We're going to look at the food and the protein content and the carbohydrate content. And God said, "Behold, I've given you every herb-bearing seed." What's a herb-bearing seed? A herb-bearing seed is a grain. A herb-bearing seed is a legume. And a herb-bearing seed is, yes, a seed. And we have so many grains: wheat, rye, barley, oats, amaranth, millet, quinoa, so many grains. Grains are high in protein, but they are also very high in carbohydrate. How many on our carbohydrate list are from grain? So grain, and we could do about 10 different ticks on this one. Grain. The majority are from the grain department. A legume is a seed: lentils, chickpeas, lima beans, black-eyed beans, cannellini beans, high in protein, but medium to low in carbohydrate. And this is what a lot of people don't realise, that the legumes are only about a third the carbohydrate that you will find in the grain. Seeds. So what are the seeds? Pumpkin seed, sesame seed, chia seed, flaxseed or linseed, high in protein, low in carbohydrate. God said, "Behold, I've given you every herb-bearing seed and every tree, and the which of the trees a fruit-bearing seed?" That's a nut. The nut comes from the fruit of the tree. And there are so many different types of nuts: macadamia nut, cashew, almond, Brazil, hazelnut, pecan, you call it pecan, walnut. So many nuts. And nuts are high in protein and low in carbohydrate. And the last thing God said in that verse is the seed to you it shall be for meat, which I find an interesting statement. What does to you it shall be for meat mean? It means your main substance. And all of these generously supply the 3 essentials. The third essential is fat. Did you hear that? Essential. That's why this fat-free diet, this low-fat diet, is a crazy diet. It's unscientific, it's unsustainable. The fattiest organ in the body is the brain. And in Australia, there are 1,700 cases of Alzheimer's being diagnosed weekly. Yeah. Has this fat-free diet got something to do with it? I don't think it's the only cause, but I certainly think it's a contributing factor. In fact, one writer said they think it's going to take a whole generation to get fat phobia out of the brain. 50% of the membrane around every cell in the body is fat, except for the brain cell. Around the brain cell, it's 70% fat. These are the 3 foods that keep the food in the stomach longer, allowing for what I mentioned in the last lecture, time-restricted eating. Time-restricted eating came out of the 5-2 diet, came out of the intermittent fasting. It's eating twice, 6 hours apart in a 24-hour period. Google it, have a little look at it. You know what they're finding? Diabetics are coming off their medication, type 1 and type 2. And what have diabetics been told for the last 30 years? Oh, you've got to eat every 2 hours. Actually makes no sense. Eating every 2 hours, do you know that the last thing you ate still in your stomach? Because it takes 3.5 to 4 hours for digestion to take place. To be able to do the time-restricted eating, we need a high fibre, generous protein and great fats. And the beauty of this diet that God gave Adam and Eve, it's all there. And you put that with the fruits and vegetables, you've got a complete diet. I also wanted to show you that this high carbohydrate diet, that's just easy, it's just fast, and I think that's why people have just fell into it. But it's a contributing factor. In fact, with cancer, there can be many contributing factors. But I believe that this is one of the contributing factors. Because cancer loves high glucose, and this certainly supplies the high glucose. I'd like to look at microorganisms and their role in disease. So microorganisms are microscopic, and understanding the role of microorganisms on the planet, in the body, is integral to understanding disease and also understanding cancer. Microorganisms are everywhere. We're in the air we're breathing. They're on every surface area. They're on my skin. They're in my body. We have 100 trillion cells in our body. And there are 10 times the microorganisms in the body to cells, and there are 10 times the microorganisms in the gastrointestinal tract. They're everywhere. Does that mean we're more plant than animal? These microorganisms are everywhere, but whenever cell damage happens, these microorganisms change roles. We change roles. All through life we change roles. A month ago, I was in Scotland, and I'm not dressed now the way I was dressed in Scotland because it was very cold. I'm not dressed now the way I'm dressed when I'm sleeping. My daughter Emma bought me a linen nightie. You know, be careful on the fabric that's touching your skin. We'll look at that a bit more tomorrow with hormones. But she brought me this linen nightie. I look like I'm from out a little house on the prairie. But it's very nice to sleep in. And we change roles all through life. I'm not dressed now the way I was dressed on my morning exercise. I'm not dressed now the way I'm dressed when I'm digging in my garden. We change roles. We change roles all through life according to the environment. Note that. We change roles according to the environment, and so do these microorganisms. So whenever cell damage happens, they now change roles. They now become something that a microbiologist said to me that they call them the cleanup team. Or you call them the garbage collectors, or you call it trash. We don't say trash, we say rubbish or garbage. Anyway, we'll just call them the cleanup team. And the cleanup team, its name is bacteria. That's what bacteria is, that's what it does. And the more rubbish, the more bacteria. Is it a snake? Oh, I just feel like I'm at home. I wondered what they were doing. Thanks, Tristan. You can stay around. Ha ha. Oh, look, I'd much rather this than be in a fancy hotel in Dubai. Love it. Okay, back to the drawing board. I'm sure everyone's awake now. Okay, back to our microorganisms. They change role according to the environment. So the cleanup team is bacteria. That's what it does. That's why it's there. And as the environment changes, and it certainly changes after the bacteria has worked on it, they now become the exterminators. The exterminators, you may have heard of these ones called yeast, fungus, and there's another one, he became very popular in 2020, it's called virus. Do you know they have the same functions? They need a host. That's why you don't have to be scared of the seat in the airplane. Do you know, when they give me sand sanitizers, do you like that? Sand sanitizers, hand sanitizers. I say no thank you very much. In fact, in 2020 or 2021, I'd often walk into a shop rubbing my hands. Made them think I'd done something. It's a bit crazy, wasn't it? That's why we don't need to fear this, and that's why I'm showing you their true role. And it's unbelievable that the whole world closed down because of that. See, what we got to ask ourselves is why? Why are they there? As the environment changes, so do they. They now become the undertakers. What are undertakers? They bury things. They take away dead things. And their name is mould. And it's not long after the mould stage that the matter is now brought back to dust. This is the cycle of life. What I have just drawn for you here is the carbon cycle. And this cycle is designed to bring matter back to dust. And what does the preacher say at the funeral? Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. What's he referring to? He's referring to what's about to happen in the coffin. The matter is about to be brought back to dust. These are the players in the cycle of life. They're the performers in the cycle of life. And if ever they're present in a house, in a body, we have to put our detective hat on and find out why are they there. And they're only going to stay around where they're getting well fed. Dr. Tullio Simoncini, sorry, he's not a doctor anymore. They took everything away from him. He must have done something right. He's an Italian oncologist. He was getting 90% success with cancer. He was injecting sodium bicarbonate straight into the cancer. Sodium bicarbonate is the ultimate alkalizer, and when it goes into cancer, it gives a wave of alkalinity, and what does cancer hate? In fact, 15 years ago, he had a little video clip on YouTube, and he put a camera down in a lung, and he showed the cancer. It was white. And then he injected via a portacath sodium bicarbonate straight into it, and it just shriveled up. You could actually see that. Well, they had to do something about him, didn't they? It is not, I can't tell you exactly when, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, he injected sodium bicarbonate into a cancer, and the person died. Now, I don't know the whole story, it's hard to find out. Maybe it's like the lady that came to us. She'd been given 3 days to live a week ago, and she passed at our retreat. Do you know, what can you do when it is so advanced? And some people, I find, come to us at the very last stage. They've been poisoned, they've been cut, they've been burned. I mean, chemo, radiotherapy operated. Isn't that the poison, cut or burn? My husband believes that in 20 years they're going to say we were in the dark ages with cancer. Anyway, so what they jumped on him, put him into jail, charged him with manslaughter, took all his qualifications away. My husband said if only he'd injected the patient with chemotherapy. How many die? And there's no accountability for that. But he showed that in every cancer case, he could find yeast. And so he entitled his book, Cancer is a Fungus, because that's what he found. And he also found if you gave the same conditions that you would give to eliminate fungus, it helped to conquer cancer. And that's what he was doing. He was just injecting sodium bicarbonate straight into the cancer, and it couldn't survive that alkaline environment. So what can we do? Because I am not an oncologist, and I cannot put a portacath straight into a cancer, but a friend of mine went and saw Dr. Tullio Simoncini. She's a Canadian doctor. This is when he was still practicing, and she said to him, do you talk to your patients about nutrition? And he said, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm an oncologist. Now, what he said is right. Did you hear that? They don't study nutrition. And yet when they become a doctor, they have to take the Hippocratical oath, first do no harm. And what did Hippocrates say? Let food be your medicine and medicine be your food. So what we do, considering everything I've just shown you, when someone comes to us wanting to conquer cancer, number one, we starve. We want to starve that cancer. And in his book, The Germ That Causes Cancer, by Doug Kaufman, he also writes with a Dr. Holland, and Dr. Holland said, if you deprive cancer cells of glucose, they self-destruct. So what we suggest is no fruit, no sweet for 6 weeks. So what do they eat? Lots of vegetables. And there are some fruits, the classification of fruit is it has its seed in it. There are some fruits that are considered savoury fruits because they're very low in glucose. Avocado, tomato, you say. That's right, just making sure you know what, I'm interpreting my Australian for you. Tomato. I was in Atlanta Airport one day and I said, can you tell me where the A gate is? He said, oh, we don't have that. I realised it's the accent, the A. Anyway, I did find my A gate. So there's tomato, zucchini, cucumber, you call it squash, we call it pumpkin, lemon. These are all considered fruits, but they're very low sweet. So they're fine because what we're aiming to do is to get that, and I think it's impossible to have no glucose, so what we're aiming for is low. And when you understand how the cancer cell runs, and that's what Dr. Holland said, when you deprive cancer cells of glucose, they self-destruct. You see, this pathway here, it can wait for the glucose from the carrot, from the broccoli. But this one here, it's almost dependent on that high glucose release diet. And so for the first 6 weeks, we suggest no fruit, no sweeteners at all. So they eat a lot of legumes. And there are so many different legumes. You could have a different legume every day for 10 days. There are so many different ones. One lady said, Monday I do lentils, Tuesday I do cannelloni beans, Wednesday I do black-eyed beans, or you call them black-eyed peas, yes? That's right. Got to get the terminology right. And then on Thursday she'll have kidney beans, and then on Friday maybe organic tofu. A friend of mine did a thesis on tofu, soybean, and her friends say, tell us about soybean. She said, it's real easy. God made it good, man mucked it up. So when you eat soybean, just make sure it's non-GMO and organically grown, and it's fine. And so variety is very important, and there are so many different legumes and so many different vegetables, and olives, that's another considered fruit, but of course it's savoury, and that gives great fats, so nuts and seeds every meal. So it's important to have a variety. Tristan's bread would be excellent because it's very low glycemic index, because he uses whole grains, and the sourdough method of making the bread reduces the glucose content, because the sourdough or cultured bread, it consumes the glucose, which is in those grains. It has a little, causing that bread to rise. That bread can stay in your fridge for 6 weeks. In fact, his competitors say to him, we don't know how you do it, and he just smiles. So that's, and grain keeps to a small amount, not a huge amount. You don't have a whole plate of rice. You might have half a cup of rice. You might have 2 cups of lentils. So it's, and lots of vegetables, lots of salads. Potatoes are fine. You just don't have a whole plate of them. We're starving the cancer, so check your house. Make sure there's no mould in your house. I've had some very sad cases of people with advanced cancer, and I've discovered that they've been living in mouldy houses. And remember Dr. Tullio Simoncini's book is called Cancer is a Fungus. Now, it doesn't mean that all cancers caused by fungus. In some it can be major, in some it can be minor. In every case, there can be different factors coming in. Another is a hormone factor, and we'll look at this in detail tomorrow night. But progesterone is a hormone that's given the nickname mother, because mother hormone is the precursor for the son, that's testosterone, and mother hormone is the precursor for the daughters, which are the estrogen. Now what's happening today, and we'll look at this tomorrow, what's happening today is we're getting things that are causing disruption in this hormone balance. What mother hormone does, she has a protective role on testosterone. But if progesterone drops and estrogen goes too high, then testosterone has lost the protection, and this is where prostate cancer can develop. And prostate cancer, anyone with prostate cancer must go on a hormone balancing cream to get progesterone up again to protect that testosterone. The Australian Health Department have stated that estrogen is a known human carcinogen. Why do they say that? Because estrogen is a cell proliferator. Cell proliferator means causes massive cell growth. So when estrogen levels come up high and progesterone levels drop, that's a big contributing factor to breast cancer in a woman, prostate cancer in a man, back to the woman, ovarian cancer, cervical cancer, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, all cancers of the reproductive organs, you will find has a hormone factor. So how does estrogen get up like that? The contraceptive pill is one of the biggest culprits. One lady said, but it was 30 years ago that I was on the pill. I said, yeah, it was 30 years ago, and it threw the hormones out of balance, and they're still out of balance. What can also cause this disruption is plastics. And there are chemicals in the plastics that mimic estrogen, so that can get it up. When I was a little girl, everything I wore was cotton. Cotton underpants, cotton singlet, cotton dress, cotton socks. But you have a look at the fabrics that clothes are made out of today. And there are 3 fabrics, and you remember by nap. You won't nap well if your sheets or your nightwear is made out of any of these. Nylon, acrylic, polyester. These 3 fabrics were created in a chemical laboratory. I am not interested in allowing any of those fabrics to touch my skin. And they also can have an estrogenic effect to get the estrogen up. Ladies, have a look at what your underwear, your bra, is made out of. And you will find that about 85% of bras for women are made out of nylon, acrylic or polyester. Eesh. Unbelievable. But if every woman in this room refused to buy a bra made out of nylon, acrylic or polyester, things would change. Am I right? We, the consumer, have power. So let me introduce you to a couple of fabrics that are made out of wood pulps. This one's made out of, viscose is made out of bamboo. Rayon is made out of wood pulp, and also modal. Modal is the cellulose spun from the birch tree. So these 3 get a tick because they're made out of wood. They do use chemicals to soften the fabrics, but all you have to do is wash it and put it on the clothesline. Do you remember those things called clotheslines? I think the clothesline people, I should be getting part of the money because I'm pushing them. Did you know that I've never owned a dryer? I just wash my clothes and put it on the clothesline. What do you do if it rains? I hang it under the veranda. Cotton, of course, is a natural fibre, but it's the most sprayed crop in Australia. So when you buy cotton sheets or towels, you must wash it and put it in the clothesline for the day because the sun purifies. In all of these areas, you've got to starve that body because little by little, like the dripping tap on a stone, these chemicals are coming in. And as I just showed you, they are causing many problems in the body, including the disruption of the hormones. Now, the cream that is sold in the shop there, it's called Comfort Cream. It contains a plant chemical that causes a boost in progesterone. And so anyone that has any form of cancer, male, prostate, women in the reproductive areas from ovarian to breast, it's imperative that they start applying that yam cream to again balance the hormones, because estrogen is classified as a human carcinogen. Eeh. Isn't that incredible what the princes have done to us? Isn't it time to start questioning and not put your trust in the princes? The baby boomers, they were introduced to the pill. No one ever questioned it. So there are many areas where this cancer must be starved. Get the chemicals away, get the moles away. We had a very sad story of a young woman who was only 35. She had advanced breast cancer. It's very sad because she came at a very late stage, only 35 with 3 little children. And when I investigated, because we must always investigate the cause, I found that she lived in a house. This was the sunny side of the house, but there were big trees around the house. And this was her bedroom. Her bedroom was here, her wardrobe was here, and her bathroom was here. And she told me that in her ensuite, it was often damp and her shoes would go mouldy, her belts would go mouldy, her leather coat would go mouldy. And the other bedrooms were up here, but there was lots of big windows here, but the sun could easily go through, so the rest of the house was fine. It was just her section here, big trees all around it, no sun getting in. Sun purifies the air. When she heard about the mold, the yeast factor with cancer, she just put her head down and shook her head, and we said, "What is it?" She said, "My house, where I live, it's so mouldy." She said, "It's only in my ensuite, it had no window in it, and also her wardrobe. And who's cleaning it? She is. And every time she cleans it, she's breathing in the pores." It's a very sad story. She rang up her husband. She said, "I can't go back to that house." They didn't realise it. He was at work all day and she was the cleaner. She was the one that was getting most exposed. Very sad story because she only lived another few months. It's very sad because it was very advanced. So please look at all the areas to starve. Mold exposure, chemical exposure. And if someone has a situation with cancer, they can starve it, give an initial mighty blow, really. As Dr. Holland says, when you deprive cancer cells of glucose, they self-destruct. Number 2, kill. I do think we have to get away from the kill mentality, but there are herbs that will kill cancer, kill fungus, and won't kill you. Isn't that good news? Remember Psalm 104 verse 14? God gave herbs for the service of man. They come in and they will kill cancer cells, kill yeast and fungus, but they won't kill you. Antibiotics, they can kill bacteria, but you know they kill everything. What one writer said, taking an antibiotic is like dropping an atomic bomb in the body. What did the atomic bomb kill? Good and bad alike? I'm not against antibiotics, but really the average person should only have about 2 in a lifetime. Did everyone hear that? 2 in a lifetime. They should be kept really as life-saving. But if you nip it in the bud, if as soon as there's a problem you deal with, it really has to be advanced. I raised 8 children without antibiotics and they're all still alive. And an antibiotic comes from a mould. It's a mould waste. That's what penicillic acid is, the mould waste from the mould penicillium. How many people take an antibiotic and get thrush? That's because it's a mould. As I said, the body can cope with about 2 courses in a lifetime. And so long-term antibiotic use can be contributing to the development of yeast and fungus, even to the point of cancer in the body. Again, there's not one thing that causes cancer. There can be a whole lot of bits and pieces coming together. So what are the herbs that will kill fungus and won't kill you? Garlic. Garlic's a strong one. Need about 3 raw cloves a day. Not every stomach can handle that. You can have a bowl of hot soup and crush a clove of garlic into that, and that hot soup will just take the edge off the strong garlic. Olive leaf extract, teaspoon 3 times a day, something like that. Another one is grapefruit seed extract. Have you ever eaten a grapefruit and bitten into the seed? You'll think the grapefruit's sweet when you bite that seed. Strong volatile oils that kill fungus. It's about 5 drops 3 times a day. That's about the dose. Another one is portiaco. Portiaco is a South American herb. In my book, Self-Heal by Design, I've explored this in much greater detail. I give the whole history. It's very well researched. In fact, there's a book by a doctor, who is a Professor Constantini. He's former head of the World Health Organization, Department of Mycology. Department of Mycology means fungus, so it's the study of fungus. So he was the head of that department, and after 20 years of research, he showed without any doubt the link between cancer and fungus. So that's another expert in the field. He's from Germany. Dr. Tullio Simoncini's Italian. Doug Kaufman and Dr. Holland, they're American. So you see, these findings are coming from all over the world, and I've quoted them all in my book, Self-Heal by Design. Professor Constantini, in some of his books, he quotes 30,000 research papers showing the link. So why doesn't medicine acknowledge the link? Well, they would also have to acknowledge that some of their major drugs are putting fungus into people, which is your antibiotic, which is many of your statin drugs. After tomorrow night, if anyone's on statin drugs, I don't think they will be anymore. I'm going to give you the truth tomorrow night on the true cause of heart disease. I'm just a teacher, but I'll be quoting many experts and doctors in the field that will prove it. Now, because these microorganisms have the ability to adapt and adjust, when the antibiotic comes along to kill, a lot die, but some of them survive and get stronger. And so this kill mentality that has been used so much today with the antibiotics is actually creating superbugs. You've probably heard that. It makes no sense to just kill. We're going to find out, why are they there? If you don't turn the tap off, if you don't find the cause, you're still going to be mopping up in the other corner. Why are they there? Don't just come in with the bazookas. Don't just come in, kill, kill, kill. Find out why they're there. Because if you don't turn the tap off, you're still going to be mopping up. That's why this young woman, if only she'd known that this mouldy house was a big contributing factor to her cancer, she would have been out of that house years ago. A lot of people don't realise the danger. Because microorganisms have the ability to adapt and adjust, when you use the herbs to kill off the fungus in the body, change it every week or two. Because just as they're getting used to the garlic, stop and do the grapefruit seed extract. And then after a couple of weeks, they're getting used to that, we'll stop and do the olive leaf extract. And so you keep alternating. In my book, Self-Heal by Design, I list all of the herbs that effectively can kill off cancer, can kill off fungus, but not kill you. Another one, bestseller, is Dr. Colin Campbell and his book, The China Study. And he discovered in the Philippines that children were dying of liver cancer between the age of, I think it was about 8 to 10 years of age. And he found the one common denominator was peanut butter. And every jar of peanut butter he tested had fungus in it. It was aflatoxin. And aflatoxin is the fungus, the mold waste, that causes liver cancer. Now, if you grow peanuts, harvest them and cook them, not a problem. You see, they're a ground legume, and the problem arises in storage. So you get a cold, frosty morning, you get a hot, sunny day, and in the silo or the storage where the peanuts are, you've got moisture building up, and those peanuts can grow it very easily. If you're feeling sad right now because you love peanuts, try growing your own. Or if you love peanut butter, try cashew butter, try almond butter. Maybe you can come to Australia and get macadamia butter. It's about the only country you can afford it. So another one with starving. Kill men. So starve the fungus, kill it. And the third one is alkalize. So how do we alkalize? Because remember, that's what cancer hates, is alkalizing. Oxygen alkalizes at our retreat, and there is a health retreat in Colorado, and it's called Eden Valley. And I've run a few programs there over the year, and they have a couple of hyperbaric chambers. You've heard of hyperbaric chambers? Hyperbaric chambers were developed for divers with bends. You see, in the air we breathe, 79% is nitrogen and 21% is oxygen. And what the divers, the deep sea divers, they'd come up too quick and they couldn't expel that nitrogen quick enough, and it'd go into little bubbles in their muscles, and it's very painful. That's the bends. So they developed hyperbaric chambers. See, Henry's law states that under pressure, more gas goes into a liquid. So with the hyperbaric chamber, The liquid, of course, is our body tissues, our blood, being the carrier of oxygen, and the gas is oxygen. So pure oxygen goes in under pressure in these chambers, and the nitrogen would disperse and the divers healed from their bends. But they're discovering that the hyperbaric chamber can help with cancer because it boosts the oxygen levels in the blood. And remember, cancer cannot live in the presence of oxygen. So the hyperbaric chamber can play a role. So that's one way to alkalize. Can't afford a hyperbaric chamber. I think they're about $30,000. Another way a very simple way to boost your oxygen levels on a day-to-day basis is nose breathing. In Genesis 2 verse 7, the Bible says that God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils. You get that? Nostrils. No mouth to mouth here. Nostrils. And what the anatomy and physiology of the body states, that nose purifies the air, humidifies the air, warms the air, balances blood gases. And when we look at the heart tomorrow, I'm going to show you the blood gases that the nose breathing balances, because it helps with the heart. Also, nose pressurizes the air, making it perfect for our lungs. So just the simple act of nose breathing can up the oxygen levels in the blood. So if you're a mouth breather, there's a really easy way to be cured, and that's called taping up your mouth. You won't die. One guest said to us, "What if I wake up dead?" Now, I've got a more civilised way to do it. Put a little bit of tape under your nose to your chin for an hour every day, and your brain will get used to it, and then you can sleep with it overnight. What if the canals at the back of your nose have shrunk up? It's an illustration: if you don't use it, you lose it. The more you nose breathe, the more those little canals open up. Even with deviated septums, you can open up those canals by nose breathing. Also alkalizing is green drinks. And what we do at Misty, we gather wild greens. This might be pumpkin, or we call it squash tops, you know, the vines. It might be some wild herbs. And mint, we usually get 4 greens, sometimes stinging nettle. 4 greens, 4 cups. With 4 cups of water, blend it. The mint makes it taste a bit better, just tastes like grass. And then you strain it, so you're drinking green water. If you don't have wild greens, what you can do is buy green barley powder or super greens or chlorophyll. But those, it's like a supplement of these green drinks to help alkalize the tissues. And what we also do is sodium bicarbonate wraps. Sodium bicarbonate wraps, you can Google my name and sodium bicarbonate wraps, and you'll find a demonstration of me doing the sodium bicarbonate wraps. But it's about 5 litres of hot water, 2 kilos of sodium bicarbonate. You dip towels in it, and bit by bit you wrap the whole body. And we have seen some remarkable turns around. This is not a cancer cure. None of these are cancer cures. The only thing that can cure from cancer is the human body when it's given the right conditions. And one of the first things I said when I started this was, when you understand what cancer loves and what cancer hates, our aim is to give the body everything cancer hates so it cannot survive. So when people come to our retreat, we say to them, we can't promise anything. The one thing we can promise is we'll do the best we can, but this is what we have seen. Sometimes we've seen people totally conquer cancer. In fact, a man came to our program. I said, why are you coming to our retreat? He said, I met a man in the street the other day that said he had cancer, came to your retreat, and he has no more cancer. We didn't even hear about that one. Sometimes we've seen it turn around. Sometimes we've seen 6 months go to 6 years. And sometimes we've seen the last days made more comfortable. And that's what happened with this very sad story of this 35-year-old girl. In fact, her husband rang and he said, thank you so much. The last days were made more comfortable. It all depends on how advanced it is, all depends how willing the person is to do what you've got to do to get a turnaround. Sometimes I'll see a case and I'll think, it's going to be touch and go, it's quite advanced. And then we get a call 12 months later, they've just had a test and they're cancer-free. And then there'll be another case where I think, yeah, they're young, it's not that advanced, I think they've got a good shot at this. And then we hear 9 months later that they've passed. There are so many factors that come together, and what I've endeavoured to do was just touch on the main ones tonight. With some people, it can be major emotional problems, and we're going to be touching on emotions, I think, more on the weekend. So there can be so many factors. That's why I say you're the doctor. Look at your history. That's one of the first things you've got to do, is look at your history, write down all the bits and pieces that make you you. And of course you can't change what happened in times past, but I'm inquisitive. I like to know why. So let me leave you with the story of Elizabeth Cott. Elizabeth Cott came to us and she had 3 main tumours in her abdomen. She was, I think, mid-60s, and the doctor said, you got to do chemo immediately. But she didn't like the sound of it. She didn't like the side effects. And a friend of hers told her about our retreat. So she came to our retreat, and we put her on the fruit-free diet, started the herbs. Remember, you don't do all the herbs at once. You change it every couple of weeks. Put her on the alkaline diet. We didn't have the hyperbaric chamber when she came to us. That was about 8 years ago. But she had, I think, 5 wraps, 1 a day for a week. She went back to the doctor 3 months later and he said, just keep doing what you're doing. Now, what did he say in the first visit? You've got to begin chemo immediately. What you've got to remember is that's all they know. That's all they know. It's almost like playing Russian roulette with chemo. And they know that. They're hoping that more cancer cells die than good cells. Did you hear that? It's like a gamble. Because it does kill the good and the bad alike. She went back to the doctor, and it would have been about a year since she was first diagnosed, and he said, it's very strange, but one of your tumours has gone. The next year, another tumour went. She said, I have never felt so good. She said, I feel better now than I felt in my 40s. When she goes to see the doctor now, the oncologist there, the specialist there, they can't understand it. They've never seen anything like it. She's giving health lectures now. Do you know, when the government banned me, they claimed that Elizabeth Cott was a fictitious woman. She said, give them my number. I said to her a year after that, I said, have they rung you? She said, no, they haven't. And that actually tells me that they're not really interested in the truth. Elizabeth Cott is one of many that we've seen turn around. Amazing illustrations of this body with its inbuilt ability to heal itself, and how it will when you give it the right conditions. Thank you for your attention tonight, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow night.
Thank you, Barbara. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Barbara's daughter Emma is shut down the booth for tonight, but it'll be open tomorrow at 3 p.m. So get here early if you need to, if you'd like to purchase books or any of the things they have to offer there. Simple Needs is going to stay open for 30, 40 minutes, maybe an hour tonight. If anybody didn't get bread and they want to, we're not going to be doing any